What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 16 of the A to Z series. And today we're talking about Florian, the Rotwood Harbinger. And today I brought with me a fellow teammate, Ed Knight, and we're going to be talking about this hero and kind of the overarching goal of the A to Z series is to give you a brief introduction into the hero, but also dive in a little bit. We want to kind of go over, you know, sideboarding strategies and overall deck tech as a way to get you started, and then also dig into some matchup strategy as well. So, a good introduction, a way to beat it, things like that is what we want to provide for you. So, Ed, I'm going to give you a second to go ahead and introduce yourself. Everybody on that watches the channel probably already knows, but we might get some
That's
new
right.
ones. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Ed Knight. For those of you who don't know me, I've been on the Card Guys for a little while. I've been Card Guy adjacent for a long time, basically ever since I started playing. From the first time, Nathan admitted that I was not terrible at the game after having a really good tournament run, first tournament in Indy back in 2022. I'm also the min-max Fab Champion Team Battle. Of course, I got it. I won a trophy. That's my proudest achievement in Fab, other than my gold rampart that I won with the other Card Guys. But yeah, that's me. I've gotten a lot of top 16s, got a few top 8s, battle hardens, calling once, and then top 16s at Pro Tours and whatnot. So I like to think I know what I'm talking about here and there. I mainly play Guardian, so we're doing something a little different. This is not what I'm generally used to, but it's kind of all right. I feel a little bit at home, you know.
Okay. So right now, Florian as a whole, there's a big conversation. Should you lean into the OTK package?
Mm.
Should you play this mid-rangey kind of value-oriented kind of style that we've seen Yuki kind of make a little bit popular from that top 8 run that she had? And so which strategy are you in favor of? And what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of going one way versus the other?
I'm more in favor of the mid range, obviously, for anybody who knows me. Like I said, been a Guardian player for a long time. Guardian is not very good right now, so we're going to the next best disruptive hero, which at this point is Florian, because you get all these nice disruptive cards, right? The OTK plan is good. I've seen it in some of the top 8 lists from some of the Japanese battle hardens and whatnot. I think it has viability, but it has different matchups that it's trying to attack and be better into, right? But for me, I found that this is the most consistent for at least my playstyle, and it's a little more comfortable to me, right? So you're attacking more. You have like a better matchup into Enigma, I believe, with a list similar to this. You know, you're playing your channel mounts, your go again cards, and your disruption, Summer's Fall, so on and so forth. Whereas the OTK has to really slow the game down and beat that, where somebody like Enigma will just kind of outvalue, right?
Okay. And right now we're kind of in the heyday for the Runeblade class.
Mm.
And there's a lot it's the first time in a long time where probably ever since Chain where like multiple rune blades were actually playable in the meta. I think there was one time where Viscera, Briar, and Chain, like there was a kind of a reason. At that point in time, I think Viscera just got hit by the skeleton ban, but like
Mm.
we've we've had very few situations where like all the rune blades were decent. And we're back into that situation. We have, of course, Florian as a choice. We have Viserai, Vinny, and Aurora that are all, I would say, at least B tier or above in most people's tier list. So why would we play Florian when we can play the other three? What are some advantages we get? What are some disadvantages?
Sure. So for me, it's more of a play style preference because I think the better ones, at least at this stage in the game, are probably Aurora and Viscera because they're just so aggressive and they can beat what at the moment is the top meta deck in the game, being Enigma. That's kind of the boogeyman of the format, right? But Florian does have a lot of tools. He's kind of a toolboxy deck, which means that you have a lot broader field, like a lot more 50-50s or close matchups, and then you can kind of skill gap your opponents that way. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. We'll see if that actually plays out. But yeah.
Okay. And then also Florian's like probably the third most represented from like a play representation percentage.
Mm,
Number one is obviously Aurora. Number two is probably Viscera, and then
right.
Florian and Vinny follow them. So another reason, I guess, would be if you really don't like mirror matches or you want to play less
Right.
of them, because the Aurora mirror match can get a little DGen really quickly.
Right.
Everybody's throwing CLVs everywhere and stuff like that. So maybe if you don't want to play those mirror matches, which Runeblade mirror matches historically have been a little sus, then maybe this is the route for you. Maybe this is a way to avoid that situation entirely, or at least reduce it. So let's go ahead and dig into the deck. So you are a player that likes to subscribe to the model of you like to take everything out that never, or you take anything out that is ever taken out, and
Right.
that's your main board. And then you bring it in for whatever matchup, which is funny because I'm actually the opposite way. I like to run the aggro 60, right, and then just
Sure.
tailor it from there.
Sure.
So anything that's in the 36, if I'm not mistaken, it's in there. It's never
Right.
coming out for any
Right.
matchup. Okay. So let's start with those cards, and then we will move into the sideboard and kind of understand what our toolkit is basically.
Sure.
So let's start with Arcane Seeds.
Okay.
Why is that the most busted 0 for 5 in the game?
So first off, base value, it's always going to be 3. It's a non-attack, which plays well with your chest that you're going to be playing the majority of every matchup. And it's an earth card. Like, there's so many benefits for this. It's so flexible. And then late game, you're able to say, I'm going to go ahead and gain my life. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, because you're only playing Reaping Blade. But you guarantee, unless somebody plays like a Ripple Away or something, you're going to get 4 Rune Chants and be able to send probably 6 Rune Chants, pitching a blue for grass, playing this, and then swinging the sword. And that's a 2-card 9 value, which is extremely above rate. Like, Florian is definitely the value king, and this is one of the reasons that he is the value king in the late game.
Right. And then also to counter the point of Ripple Away, I think Ripple Away would only stop one instance of, because it's 2 different instances, and I think Ripple Away is worded that the next time you gain it, you
Right.
make 1 less, right?
Right.
So it would only affect 1/2 of the card, I think. We'll have to look at the wording to clarify, but
yeah, it would be like 3 Rune Chants instead of 4. I'm pretty sure is the way, because it's specific to each action card. So it's just reducing the 1 from the action card. I think that's the way it's worded, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can guarantee you're at least making 2. We can promise that.
That's right.
So yeah, this is just an auto include 3 of, I think, in probably every Florian deck. I don't see any situation where you wouldn't run this card. Let's go ahead and move on to the next card, which is one that you're not going to see in every Florian deck, and that is Channel Mount Heroic. Obviously, if you're on the more OTK strategy, you're not even going to entertain this card. Why are you playing it?
So you got to build a mountain sometimes. Just got to build it. That's right. So this card in general, again, it's another non-attack Earth 3-block. It's really good with your chest. So at worst case, it's going to be a 3-block, sometimes more. And then it's a way to extend your hand. So when you're given a whole bunch of extra cards, you can extend, usually keep it around for 2 to 3 turns. And against something like Enigma, where you need a little bit more damage push to be able to clear their board, this card helps you achieve that. That's the main reason there. Again, like I said, there's some situations where you are playing against, some mid-rangey deck. They decide that they're going to take an off turn, just Arsenal, and then you draw this. You're able to capitalize off of their play, and kind of punish them for trying to set up a bigger turn as well.
Right. Kind of reminds me of the Victor situation, where if you ever just concede tempo to Victor, they'll have to pitch their block cards because they just don't do anything, kind of situation.
Right.
So it's cards like these that prevent those situations for this deck, because it just gives you an outlet to use your cards offensively if you're ever given the room. But most of the time, you're probably just blocking with it and decomposing it and going about your day. So seems pretty decent. CNC, I don't think it really needs any type of introduction. It disrupts, right? It does what it's trying to do. It combos great with Canopy Shelter. Same thing for E-Strike. It's just an extender, flexible card. But let's talk about the one after E-Strike. Let's
All
go
right.
into the meat and potatoes.
This card, I like to call this one Oakenold Light, but with less
Okay.
steps, right? So as long as you have 4 Earth, you're going to have a +4, right? So 2 card 8, pretty good by itself. But you decompose, and the uninteractable disruption that this card presents is so strong at every single point of the game, whether it's coming in for 4 or 8, regardless of the situation. In mid-range games, or some of the longer control games, this card will be the card that helps you push the extra leak damage that it takes to finish the game. Against aggro decks, removing a card from them means that you take less damage, multiplicative damage throughout that. So I mean, yeah, this card's great. It's another Earth 3 block. So I mean, what's not to love about this stuff, right?
Yeah, I think this card's just the next Codex, right? Like
For
just
Earth, for
the
sure. Yeah.
yeah, just the fact that it's like a 2 card 11.
Yep.
If not more, depending on what you actually apply the value to your opponent's hand. And the most important aspect is what you said, right? Like it's no matter what point you are in the game, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's so valuable. If you're winning and you're just trying to deal that last blow, it's a great tool, right?
Yep.
If you're on the back foot and you just need a really good tempo play, it's the perfect card. So just this card overall, it just kind of does it, right? So let's go ahead and move on to the next card, and that's Swarming Gloomveil. I think this has proved to be a mainstay ever since people
For sure.
realized how easy it is to just make a rune chant, give this go again, and swing that Reaping Blade. Is there any other
Right.
reason why we have this in the deck?
It pairs very well with Channel for obvious reasons. So when you have a
Mhm.
Channel turn, say you have this in Arsenal, and you have 4-card hand that's Channel, blue, blue, and then let's talk about this card again, right? Felling. So you can go Channel, Swarming Gloomveil, come in for 6, go again, because Channel is an aura that meets this requirement for the go again on this card, and then you can Felling, and then just have this insane tempo swing that your opponent will not be able to get around, and you're going to leak a ton of damage. You're going to push the tempo. You're just going to win the game probably when you make one of these plays.
Right.
And then
Okay.
the other great thing about this, of course, is like early game, it's still good to make a rune chant, come in for 3, go again, and then attack with your sword. That's a 2-card 7, but late game it becomes another 2-card 9. Right, so it's 2 into 4, so you beat the secondary condition of Swarming Gloomveil into 3. So I mean, 2-card 9s. There's not many decks doing 2-card 9s. Same thing with the Arcane Seas that we were talking about. That's a 2-card 9. Well, we have another one. It's right here, and it's just built in to the Runeblade kit.
And it blocks 3.
And it blocks 3. What's not?
What more do you want? What more
exactly.
do you want? Let's talk about what I think is like the whole reason to play this deck. Failing, and of course this next card, Plow Under. The fact that both of these forms of disruption, you just can't interact with it. Like this one, you can a little bit by just not arsenaling. But if you don't arsenal, then you're kind of playing into the whole mid-range game plan, because you're never spiking really hard, right? So why is this card so good?
Well, again, it's uninteractable, right? It forces your opponent into those play patterns that they're playing 4-card hands. Like you said, we're able to kind of combat that a lot easier than their 5-card hands. But we're able to punish the 5-card hands with the arsenal, right? I've been calling this card Command and Compost. The other thing too is it's Command and Conquer but yellow, uninteractable. It's just super crazy good card. A lot of times there will be situations, especially against those aggro/tempo decks, where this card might even be better than Felling of the Crown, depending on what deck you're playing against. If you're playing against an Aurora that they've been playing Gone Flash and abusing that, hey, get it out of here. We don't want that anymore. See you later. Right.
Yep, you can get like a Viscerize. You can get a Viscerize Revel or Mordred that they're waiting to use in Arsenal. You can just really blow up those. It's really just a card to keep the opponent from having really big turns and really setting up those explosive turns.
Another key note is Brute.
Card.
Yeah, Brute. They really like to Arsenal Blood Rush Bellows. You can just get that sucker out there.
Easy. Autumn's Touch, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the few Earth 3 block blues. I don't think it needs any more introduction than that. That card was banned one time. That's how good that card is. And all it is an Earth blue 3 block. That's all it is. Let's talk about Canopy Shelter. Why is it in here?
All right. It's another Earth Plume. It is a block card, so the utility there, you're left with this card. Luckily, we have Grasp with the Arknight, so you can just kind of pitch and do your thing and still fine. But the reason this is here is because it's one of the few blue Earth cards that isn't an inherent 3-block that gives you 3 points of value no matter what. Of course, if they don't strip your hand, right? And then late game, a Might token is also a token for the Florian ability, so you get 2 Might tokens. So it's a blue 4-point value card that can be used on defense to progress your offensive plan, which is great for midrange to be able to close out these games. There's been plenty of games where you're super low life totals, you're going back and forth, you're sending 5 or 6 or 7 or something along those lines, and they send that back to you. And then once you draw this card, you can block with this, block with a couple of other cards. Now you get to go, here's 2 Rune Chants and here's my sword for 5, strip their hand. Now you have more tempo, you win the game. Yep.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And CNC for 7 or 8 is not bad either.
Yep.
Right?
See, any of these on hits that you could have, there's a couple of them like Earth Form in the sideboard, of course, but like any of these on hits that you really want to push over, mainly Command and Conquer, that's what it's there for.
Yep. And then let's talk about Condemned to Slaughter.
Yep.
Obviously, you get bonus for it being a non-attack action 3 block, so you can pump this to a 4 with your chest piece or any other way you make an embodiment. But let's talk about like the effect, because that's obviously why we choose this. There's a bunch of them, right? Non-attack blue 3 blocks. Why do we pick this one?
So, like you said, it's mainly there as a non-attack blue 3 block. Just one of the more options to make your chest a little bit more appetizing to use, right? Add some consistency there, but the destroy an aura your opponent controls can actually come up in certain situations against Enigma. If they don't already have a spectral shield, you can technically make them blow up one of their ward auras if they don't already have like a transcend card or something in their hand, or like a chi that could counteract this. It can be hit or miss in that matchup, but in the mirror it's extremely good. And because they're going to play Malefics out and they're going to attack with sword, so they're usually not going to have a Rune Chant. So you can blow up their Malefic, or if they're also playing Channel or Millennium Tree, depending on if it's OTK or something like that, and they already like broke the Rune Chants to do this good tempo play because they wanted to play a Decompose card. It's just utility there, right? So it's a card that you can use not only on defense, but it has some utility when you play it. Turns on your sword, makes it a breakpoint. Ultimately, not bad.
Sounds good. Let's skip over the next one and go straight to Oath, because I think Condemn and Oath are kind of in that same spot, right? Like why this blue non-attack 3 block?
Sure. So this one is just another way to make some Rune Chants. Make 2 Rune Chants whenever you have your ability turns on, and then it makes your Reaping Blade a little bit higher. The big thing when this is kind of important is when you ended a turn, you have a Malefic incantation out, you played a Felling of the Crown. You have 2 Rune Chants, okay? You can't reliably activate Grasp to get 2 more Rune Chants or something like that, but you have 2 blues. So you go Oath of the Arknight, make 2 more Rune Chants, attack for 4 and 4, which is a lot better than just, like the 3 and 4 that you would make otherwise, right? It's just another way to push extra breakpoints when you're at that closing stages of the game.
Gotcha. Yeah. And let's talk about Germinate. Germinate, obviously, it's an Earth 3 block non-attack blue.
Yeah.
But I think this is like one of the main reasons to play this hero, because if a common strategy to combat any kind of slow mid-rangey game style is to like play a slow game, set something big up, and then blow them up. But this card specifically makes that strategy a little scary, because if you give them too much room, they could just resolve this, right? Are there any other reasons on why this is here?
This card is pretty broken in every situation. I mean, it's like you said, Earth, blue, 3 block, non-attack. So it fits every single spot that we want. If it had no text, we would probably still consider playing it. Right, just as another like
Earth,
exactly.
Earth 3 block,
yeah, non-attack specifically, right? But there's situations where it's like there are some decks who can try to fatigue you, specifically somebody like New, And this
Mhm.
card allows you to just, even with X equals 6, right? So double X, you do 3. You're going to make 8 rune chance and gain 4 life back, which is massive. Another matchup would be Burdens,
It'd
where
be X equals 3, and you would pay 6, right?
right. That's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you make 8 rune chance and you gain 4 life. Against
Yep.
Burdens, you can rune chance stack. So it gives you so many options to make
Mhm.
pivots with a card that's just like automatically stocking your deck. It's great turn 1 against certain decks as well, like
Yep.
super aggressive decks. You just make Embodiment of Earth, and then you're like, okay, now I have a bunch of Seek Belows in my next hand. Sounds good.
Yep. And
Great
gain
card.
some life. Why
That's
not?
right. That's right.
Okay, so that pretty much sums up the main board.
Mm,
Let's go ahead and move on down to the sideboard. Now this is a lot, right? Like
it is.
there's more cards in the sideboard than there is the main board. So I want to take like just a really fast and efficient approach, right? I don't think a lot of these cards don't warrant a whole lot of explanation. They're pretty
Right.
self-explanatory, right? We know why diplomacy's in there. We got to shut down the other room blades and Azalea and stuff like that.
Right.
But I'm gonna break down these packages for me and let's approach
Sure.
it that way.
Sure.
So let's start with like just an aggro package, right? Like you're going against maybe like an Aurora or something along those lines. You know, something where somebody's trying to be really aggressive into you. What's our game plan?
Sure. So against somebody who is really aggressive like Aurora, I'm generally playing the 3 blocks, the Earth, the Rootbound Carapace, because I want to defensively decompose to turn my hero ability on faster so we can get Bark Skin going just as quickly as
Hmm.
possible, right? And then cards like Earth Form make it to where I can have a efficient 2-card play that makes their offense a little less crazy on the follow-up turn, right?
Okay.
Then cards like Rune Rager Swarm are just inherent 3 blocks. Summer's Fall also pretty good against Aurora because they like to set up those embodiment of lightnings, and they also like to set up channels, right? So if they're setting up for a big turn with a channel turn, you can play Summer's Fall, bottom that guy, don't have to worry about it, right?
Hmm.
Again, the 3 blocks, Sink Blows, all this kind of stuff, you're just inherently playing those Warmongers just to have a higher overall defense rating for your deck. Some of these cards, just to explain that for just a little bit and why you're seeing so many in the inventory, some of these are only boarded out in like one specific matchup, right? So that's why there are so
Right.
many here, but I like to have it set. It's just easier to kind of adjust for me when I'm over here evaluating ratios and whatnot. But yeah, so that's if I'm playing against aggro, that's kind of the package there. Just be defensive, try to kind of mid-range them, you know, absorb the brunt of their aggression, and then come back with some disruption that is already built into the main deck.
Sounds good. And I just realized Earth Form and Briar, you make 2 embodiments.
That's right. That's right.
That's kind of sick. That's kind of sick. But
Yeah.
that's for a different episode. So okay. So what if the deck is trying to use your own strategy against you? Maybe another mid-range deck or something a little bit slower.
Sure. So it depends on the type of slow that we're talking about, because Enigma is going to
Mhm.
be very different than something else like that, right?
Right.
But against like an in general slower style deck, if I'm playing against Guardian, for instance, okay,
Hmm.
I may not want as many of these Rootbound Carapace or something along those lines. Like Summer's Fall may not be as applicable. So in those cases, to be able to convert my hands a little bit more efficiently, I'll play cards like Bramble Spark or Malefic because I know it's going to be a little bit longer, and I can guarantee for the most part that I'm going to get 6 points of value out of a Malefic instead of the generic 3 that something like Viscerai would get, right? And
Right.
then when I'm siding out cards like Yellow Rootbound Carapace, I'm replacing that with another Decomposer just to keep my ratios a little bit higher.
Okay. So it basically sounds like whatever your opponent is doing, you're trying to do the opposite.
Yeah, for the most part.
If they're being aggressive, you're trying to slow them down, play your cards out only when you have disruption, and then if they're being defensive, you want to kind of sideboard in a way to where you're really just trying to put the pedal on, right, and kind of
Right,
like don't let them just sit around and do what they want to do.
right.
Give them a little bit of pressure. Okay, so let's talk about Autumn's Touch, just 3 for 7, right? And
Yep,
you've already explained Bramble Spark. It's a great extender.
yep,
Killing, you already went over. It just fixes your decompose ratio and flips
right,
it from defensive decomposition to offensive. And then you've already kind of went into Malefic, how it's a great extender, and Earthform as well to kind of dilute the opponent's ability to kind of crack back.
Right.
And then Rune Ranger Swarm, I like to just say it's an extra weaker copy of Swarming is basically what it is. And then Sink Below, D-React, that doesn't need any explanation. Let's talk about Summer's Fall for a second, because that's a bit of a unique card, right? It's not, I think people are starting to run it. I don't think it's like a secret or anything, but
No.
why, give me a couple. There's some obvious use cases for this, right? Where Enigma, you can sync their mirror guy or something like that. But
Right.
give me some like more off the wall uses for this card.
Sure. So depending on the way you have your deck structured, I need to check the Azalea just to make sure. But one weird situation is, Azalea hits you with an inertia or something like that. You can bottom your own inertia and then keep your arsenal set up, right? So that's just one weird thing that you can do. The other thing is against, against other Runeblades, right? Like we already talked about against Aurora, is exceptionally good against them. Viscerai wants to set up multiple Malefics. If they only have one in play and you bottom that, you're going to like stint their turn heavily, because a lot of times they're going to be reliant on the cards that we play as well, these Rune Rager Swarms and Swarming Gloomfells. And if they don't have a way to just, they don't play Modern's guys anymore for the most part. So if you take away their Malefic, they have to have something else to combat that. And you're saving yourself future damage as well, right? So that's the main things. I also bring this in when I'm trying to be a little more aggressive as well, and I'm taking out the Rootbound Carapace. If I'm being like exceptionally aggressive against something like Enigma, well, it makes sense to do it in Enigma. But if it's another deck where I don't want to play Rootbound Carapace, something like Burdens, I'll bring this in as well, even though it doesn't technically have text, but it says I get to decompose faster, which is the big thing.
Right. Yep. And I'll even leave the viewers with an extra little, a little cherry on top.
Sure.
What if your Malefic is on one counter, right? And you're at the end of the game and you've already gotten 4 value from it. Why don't you sync your own and cycle it? And then that way you get 6 more value from that one card, right? So there's so many uses from what seems like a very innocent, not very impactful card. Honestly, when we first got exposed to the set, from a CC perspective, this was actually the decomposed card, other than maybe Blossom, because that was only good in like Verdance or whatever for the life game. This was like the one that I was least impressed with.
Same.
But now I think it's the best non-majestic. And I don't think it's particularly close.
Well, besides Rootbound, but the attacking one's correct.
Sure. And I think Summers might actually be better than any color that's not red in the Rootbound. So it's like, it's a really good card. There is a skill ceiling, right? Because you have to make sure that you have the decomposition set up in your graveyard because if you just throw this card, it's not what you want to be doing ever. I mean, you can throw a 2-card 6, and it blocks 2, so it's not like the most exciting thing on the planet. So really balancing that graveyard and setting these up and making sure you can actually extract full value from the situation it takes a little bit of lining up and maybe a little bit of discipline on like not, decomposing your tealing, getting 2 less value to kind of like keep that gas in the graveyard for a future turn or something like that. So let's go ahead and dig into Dread Triptic. I think that's one that's kind of common. It's probably in like half the list or so. Why is it in yours?
So the reason it's in the sideboard, to clarify this, is just one card that I do side out, and specifically new because I have so many ways to pump the Runeblade attacks. So if I take out these, then all of these cards actually do pretty much nothing, right? So like it's just kind of hedging for that. But Dread Triptic is mainly there just as another decently efficient blue 3 block that allows you to kind of extend your hand if you don't have specifically like one of the disruptive pieces or something like that. It always late game will threaten a on hit of make 2 rune chance, Or
Mhm.
if you started with a Bramble Spark, that's one of the best plays that you can do with it. Bramble Spark into Dread Triptych. Let's say you don't have one of your reds like we talked about. Then you're going to make 2 rune chants immediately. This also, the Bramble Spark will deal 1. If they don't prevent that, it can be up to 6 if they allow this to hit. So it's a nice little 2-card 4 that could be an additional 6 on a future turn.
Okay. And
At blue.
if you hit all modes, I mean, it ends up being what a 2-card 10, right?
Well,
Because
with a little bit of setup.
you make 2 off
Yep.
of it hitting. You make 2 off of if you've dealt arcane. You make 2 if you so like the peak is a 2-card 10, right? But in most cases, you're probably getting a 2-card 6, which is not bad if what you're sending is a blue card, right?
Right.
And it
Exactly.
blocks 3. So like I think it's not that the number is super impressive. It's the fact that you're getting decent value from a blue card that blocks 3, which
Right.
if anybody can do that, most people would want to.
Right.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, Seeds of Tomorrow. Now, this is one where I'm starting to see it less in a lot of the list, but why do you love it?
So I know we've talked about this in our own time, but I really do like this card a lot. So
Mhm.
it's mainly there for the toolbox situation. I love toolbox style decks and being able to have like so many different options, right? So if you're playing against Verdance and you're going to poison the well, you got to hope that you draw poison the well. Okay. Well, if you're being aggressive against Verdance and you want to play Seeds of Tomorrow at a earlier point in the game, you know, they're like, here's a destructive Aethertide for 5 or something random because they played a tree. And you're like, okay, Seeds of Tomorrow. Block all of that. Now I have a Seeds of Tomorrow ready to go with my Plume of Evergrowth. When they finally decide to do their big turn where they're going to have like 16 arcane damage on their staff, you stop 8 of it. Well, you effectively stopped 16 life damage, right, at that point.
Okay.
But it's also pretty good in certain scenarios as well. You just kind of bring it in as extra blues. For Viscerai is a pretty decent one there. Just having a little bit extra hedging to be able to just kind of, you know, have an effective 3 block, more or less, because
Right.
it's a blue. And then I like to bring it in against new because I'm taking out these blues. So we go back up to, I think, 23.
Mhm.
And which it can be a little liability there because they can use the new ability and then play it themselves if they wanted to.
Mhm.
But it's better than having Dread Triptych in there. So it's just a nice utility card. You can bring it into certain other matchups as well. Like it's very good in the Warrior, you can imagine, right?
Mhm.
So it's doesn't turn on Reprise or anything like that. Just mainly for Warrior, or not Warrior, Wizard, but good in other places. And, you know,
I mean,
again,
even if new
utility.
plays it, right? Like it they have to pay a chi and sync their arsenal. So
Right,
it's like they only get technically like 2 value from it.
right,
So it's
right.
not even if they play it, it's like cool, you got it. You
Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah, it's
And
not
then
bad.
they put an earth card in you from your banish to the grave,
Right,
which makes your decomposition easier.
right. Yep,
So we take those.
that's right.
All right.
Yeah, it's better in
So
our deck for sure.
yeah, and diplomacy, I think that's self-explanatory at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
It's been the tech card probably in Flesh and Blood for ever since it came out, pretty much.
Right.
So nobody needs any introduction. This is to stop Rune Blades, Azalea, anybody, even Dash IO. That's going to be the new thing to worry about. This is a great card against that because they're trying to play a bunch of items
Mm,
and do a bunch of stuff. So this kind of says let's take a break for a second.
right.
And it's a blue block 3 or 4 in this deck,
Yep.
so we definitely take those.
And we're a war
Um,
deck in general. So this was pretty easy for us. We're just
exactly.
sending 2 card 8s with uninteractable disruption, right? So,
Yep, easy.
yep.
The chess piece is just too good, right?
It's
I
broken. Yep.
mean, yeah. I mean, you just I've seen people block Cosmic Awakenings for 20 with like 3 cards. It just gets
Yep.
silly really quick because once your hero ability's on, you make 2 embodiments, which means you're blocking for 5 on each card now. It's ridiculous. I think
Right.
this is just the standard. I don't think that there's no secret that this is like the chess piece. Anytime where a chess piece is generally considered the play over Tunic, it has to be super strong, right? Like
Right.
it has to be super strong. And I think this is a good example of that.
Yeah. It's like Carrion Husk 2.0. That's what I've been referring to it as well. Just because you get to use it twice. That's where 2.0 comes in.
There you go.
Yeah.
And what about the carapace? Why?
AB2.
I mean, AB2, right?
That's it.
Like that baked into, and even with some armor. So if you're playing against a deck like Acilio that likes to kind of mix a little bit of, this is like what Arcane or Arcanic Fortress kind of wishes it was.
Right.
Is the way that I like to kind of put it, is like, this is what it wants to be, but it can't because it's generic, right?
Right.
So okay, I think that pretty much explains that one. Just AB2, Face Purgatory as well. I think that's pretty self-explanatory at this point. If you're playing Runeblade with more than 15 non-attack actions, I think you just play this card. It's just too good.
Yeah. And one key point is you're playing against Guardians, you play against any attack reaction heavy deck or something like that, and you can easily see, okay, they're going to do something specifically new if they play a Bonds and they have like 3 cards in their hand or something along those lines. You just be like, okay, I'm going to block Face Purgatory, attack, non-attack, force you to discard. If they have 1 card left, they have to get rid of their pummel. They have to get rid of one of their reactions that were going to bump the Bonds type situation, and you get to replace the card. Another huge thing is you play it against like Brute, right? They go Bloodrush Bellows. Okay, well, it's time for me to use Face Purgatory and destroy your hand and have another card to block with. You play it against other aggro decks or something along those lines, right? Like, even if it's not getting the full block value, you're disrupting their big turn that they're trying to set up because you were the mid-range, like, disruptive deck that they're trying to, like, get over, right? So it's just like, okay, hold on. You have a big turn, let's not. You don't get a big turn this turn, which means that you get to buy yourself more time, which means you get to decompose more, which means you get to have this on more often. Same thing with Well Grounded and some of these other pieces. I mean, this card's great. Like, this is the main reason I don't play Guardian, at least in this meta, and I swapped over here, is because the armor is just like absolutely insane in this deck.
Right.
The disruption's insane. The armor's insane. Like, Guardian has a net negative for itself. You block with Civic Steps and you give your opponent a benefit. That sucks. And you just get this stuff as Runeblade. Like, I was so jealous for so long, and here I am. I'm over here now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just Josh was having the same realization too, and it's just the armor suite has gotten to the point to where it just does everything, right? If you're Aurora, you have Spell Void 2 in the arms. If you're Earth Runeblade, you have Spell Void 2 technically in the boots. That you can also block breakpoints at split. You can block 2 breakpoints with it in the same turn. I mean, just so much stuff. I've even popped these boots just to put them in the graveyard so I can decompose, right? Like, there's just so many different angles that you can take with this equipment. And I think that's where a lot of the skill expression has shifted to, like, back in the day, it was all about counting cards and not bricking and stuff like that. But I think the Runeblades have gotten consistent enough to where I think the equipment utilization is one of the most impactful things that you can learn if you're learning the new versions of Runeblades. I think it's the most important aspect, and understanding which equipments to run and when. So, I mean, no rune boots, that's a given. Let's talk about Plume for a second. We've already kind of went over Well Grounded. I don't think it really needs an introduction, but why Plume? What does Plume allow us to do other than the seeds line? We've already seen that, right? Where you can kind of go and just reach in for it for Spell Void 5 essentially, which is pretty damn good. Let's not kid ourselves.
So
what else
it's
is it
effectively pay 3 blue, you got Spell Void 5 for some wizard go off turns. Good against Kano. It's one way to not explode against them. Again, the Burdens combo turn. Anything that's like gonna do some crazy things. But it's so good in other matchups that are going to be slower as well. So specifically Enigma, being able to buy back your Summer's Fall in a pinch. It's, say they drop a Miragai or a 10k. You don't have a Summer's Fall that you drew up, but you have one on demand as long as you played one a turn previously, which you likely will because we play 6, right? So it's pretty consistent to assume that you will be able to have a Summer's Fall and be able to use it and decompose with it just through the density and the ratios of the deck in general. The other thing is you have a lot of good cards, of course, in channel Mount Heroic, if you need to go ahead and push an extender there, if you need to kind of finish the game off with a Felling of the Crown or something along those lines, great option as well. Plow Under, another niche situation type thing. But yeah, I mean, it can get back any of these cards, even like an Arcane Seeds. There are situations where it's just like, I need the extra Arcane. Let's say you're playing against a ninja and they pop their Arcane Boots or something like that, and you're like, okay, well, they're at 6. I'm going to go get my Arcane Seeds back. And not that you would play Plume in this situation, but you get what I'm saying, right? Just there's a lot of utility in toolbox boxiness, however you want to say that, with this card that warrants its spot in the deck, at least for me, especially with the nice little tech cards like Seeds.
Yep, and I actually go way back with Plume. I actually registered it at the second U.S. Nationals in my Briar deck as an anti-fatigue tool for Oldham, because I was having this problem where I didn't know if they were going to be aggressive or fatigue. So Plume was like that perfect balance. It's like if they're not fatiguing me, then I'll just use it. I'll pitch a blue, go get a blue to just keep my channel around. If they are fatiguing me, I'll go grab a channel, right, and keep that threat density going. So it's just a very flexible card. And also it allows your decomposition to come even quicker, right? Because you can just activate it, go grab something, play something that's very easy to play, right? To just give you a +1 in the grave. You have to play the card and get it into the bin. But like the easiest one's like Arcane Seeds, right? Like you just go grab the Arcane Seeds. This goes to the bin, and then the Arcane Seeds right after you play it will go to the bin. So they give you 2 cards right there. So really good tool, very flexible, can fit a lot of game plans. Once again, really high skill ceiling to know what purpose do you want it to serve in that matchup specifically. So that's going to cover all the cards.
Yep.
The last thing that we really just wanted to cover was 2 things, just kind of general strategy into the top, we're going to say 3 decks, based off of the data from week 1 of the ProQuest. And then we're also going to spend just a second on like what are some of the weaknesses of the deck? How can you kind of combat it if this is something that you're seeing? Because we don't want to just we want to help both sides. We want to help people play it, be good at it. But if people do that, people are going to want to know how to beat it. So we want to help those people as well. So let's talk about the top 3 decks in the meta right now from a winning percentage in ProQuest week 1, which would be Aurora, Enigma, and Azalea. So let's go first to third. Let's start with Aurora.
Sure. So what I have on the screen right now is just the general board plan here. It's probably easier to show you what is not in the list versus what is being played. So Bramble Spark, more of an aggressive card. Same thing with Cadaver Stilling, Malefic, slower card. Runeblade Swarm, kind of an extender situation, then Seize of Tomorrow. Doesn't actually block. It doesn't do anything against their burn up shock turns. So you want actual blocking cards, the ability to do so. There is an argument to playing Runeblade Swarm over something like Summer's Fall, but again, like we said earlier, it's super, super critical to be able to stop their own channel turns to kind of save yourself in the long run, not just immediately, but over the course of multiple turns, kind of thinking ahead, right? So yeah, in general, being defensive, filling up your graveyard, using Rootbound Carapace in both red and yellow copies to try to kind of advance your decompose rate so you can turn your chest on as quickly as possible. Same thing with Well Grounded. Note that there's no AB in this because the game can go super short. So I don't think the AB is super, super critical, at least in that sense. And again, you can use it for breakpoints. They're a 0-for-4 deck, right? So you can go, here's a 3 block, crack boots, stop your 4. They have another 4. Okay, here's another 3 block, stop that one too. So on and so forth. Same thing with Earth Form, getting the extra embodiments that you need to be able to stop those breakpoints, and then sending back your 2-card 8s in Felling of the Crown or your Command and Conquers or anything like that.
Makes sense.
Yep.
All right, and let's talk about Enigma.
Enigma. Okay, so Enigma is a Plume of Evergrowth matchup, like we talked about.
Yep.
So we're playing the Autumn's Touch here, not playing the Earth Form. We just want a little bit more density on the 3 blocks, taking out all of the defense reactions, because we are the aggressor in this matchup, trying to maintain board state, keep their board state clear, because the bigger they build up, the harder we fall, right? We can climb a mountain, but they'll push us right off if we're not prepared, right?
Right.
So Yeah, no seeds or anything like that. We got plenty of blues to be able to supplement all of this stuff. Malefic Incantation is great, whether it's early game or late game, preferably late game. But being able to say, here's my one Rune Chant, forcing a card out of their hand if they want to protect a single aura, right?
Yep.
So one Rune Chant in a lot of ways can be better than 3 Rune Chants because they have so many blues, they're just going to stop the Rune Chants anyway, right? If you
Right.
can get 1 Rune Chant or 4 Rune Chants or anything along those lines, you're good to go. That's why Bramble Spark is such a good card in this matchup because it has the inherent deal 1 arcane damage no matter what, and we are going to fuse it almost 100% of the time. It's going to get that +3, it's going to push a lot of our things to break points, right? So
Right.
make your Command and Conquer a 9, really good. Channel is just the Bramble Spark text, but for everything. And you keep it around for 2 to 3 turns. And you can buy it back. Like we said with your Plume, the extenders in this deck are going to be your E-Strike, your Rune Ragers, and your Gloomveils. You're trying to arsenal those with the intention to play a channel, or you find a channel. Once you find one of these cards, it's time to play it out, do your thing. It's all contextual, obviously, based on
Yep.
how the matchup is going, but that is the general game plan. You want to have your big turns, you want to clear the board, set up your Decompose to where you can get to 8 as quickly as possible with your Summersfalls, Cadaver Stealing, Arcane Seeds, all that kind of stuff, right?
Okay. And then let's talk about Azalea.
All right, Azalea. So Azalea is, I think, actually one of the kind of harder matchups. It can be if they just go runner, dominate. But when they don't, Face Purgatory is really, really insane because a lot of times they're going to keep 1 card to Arsenal so they can keep their train going, flipping to their cross wrap to be able to set up a dominate and continue the disruptive plan there. But luckily, because we're more of a 2-card 8 with disruption deck, those big dominates aren't as crazy. Like the disruption effects like Red in the Ledger, not as bad. But we get Bark Skin to be able to cover up some of their more middling turns. If we can get them on 2 to 3 card hands and we're playing this back and forth disruption game, we win that every time. So that's the goal that we're trying to get to. Earth Form helping us block a little bit more efficiently all of these defense reactions. And then once you're able to snuff out one of their big turns and then present something like a Command and Conquer or a Felling or a Plow Under, right? Then you're able to usually keep the ball going and try to like close out in that way. And then at the end of the game, you can start playing your traditional mid-range plan. Grasp of the Arcanite, Reaping Blade, they're not going to be able to prevent it all, right?
Sounds good.
Cards that we take out, again, are going to be Malefic, Cadaverous, just kind of these slower cards. Similar to the Aurora matchup, but we're not playing Summersfall because it doesn't really do a whole lot. You still play the blues, and they do have some utility there, but the Rune Rager just seems to be a little bit better because as long as you don't get Red in the Ledger, this is a card that you can use to help extend your hand when they dominate you, and you can use your 3rd card as opposed to, you know, just having to overpitch for Grasp or something along those lines, right?
And it blocks 3.
And it blocks 3.
There you go.
That's right.
All right. So if people are running into this in their ProQuest season or whatever season it is while people are watching, what are some weaknesses that maybe can be exploited of this deck?
Sure. So we talked about some of the top decks, and I think the main weakness to this deck is mainly it not seeing its Decompose early enough. So if you can't Decompose quickly against those aggressive matchups, then they're just going to run you over anyway. So Aurora, Viscerai, those are kind of harder matchups if you don't see your disruption in time, if you don't see your Earth in the right sequence, right? And then Enigma can be a little more difficult for the same reason, where there's been plenty of games where it's like, I really need my Summersfall, but I don't see it until turn 7 and they have a board and then you die, right? Like it just happens. Right. So those decks are inherently pretty good against this strategy. Anything like the Aurora game plan with the Flicker Wisp, I think that's a fantastic way to kind of combat this deck. It's just we don't play the AB because the match goes super, super short, right? And then they're just gonna Flicker Wisp, Arc Lightning, and kill you out of nowhere, right?
Yeah. And then also it's like guaranteed way to get CLV triggers, right?
Exactly.
Because there's no way we can stop it. So typically it turns into this situation where they're like, double pitching to keep their CLV around because they know they can extract more value from it because you don't have an option to block it. Although you do have a little bit of play if they overextend or something like that. You can always use boots to block that arcane.
Mhm.
If you know the only source of arcanes may be coming from grasp or something like that.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
That's the big thing.
Yep. So that sounds like a decent episode, I would say, Ed. I think we did all right. I think we did all right. I
I
think if
like it.
anybody is looking for a home away from home in regards to Guardian, and you're just like looking for something that's very close, but just does everything a lot better, then maybe this is the deck for you.
Thanks, brother.
No,
Thanks.
no offense to any
Money tier.
any Betsy gamers or anything,
Yeah.
but I'm sure Guardian will be in a better place once the what is it, the Mastery Pack or
Oh,
whatever
for
it's
sure.
called
For
comes out.
sure.
Yeah,
If it's not, then what
uh,
are we doing?
right, right. They'll probably get Civic Steps in the arm or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, we already got that, but whatever.
Yeah.
If a judge
All
promo.
right. So thanks everybody for joining us for the 16th episode of A to Z. We hope you gained uh, some type of value, whether it be a little bit of entertainment or just learning about the deck, how to play the deck, how to play against the deck, some different lines. Some are following that Malefic. That's like some decent little never been in that situation kind of stuff. So I hope you gained some knowledge on the hero and the list as well. Of course, the list will be provided and the sideboarding guide will be on our Patreon. Thank you so much for joining us. And Ed, that's a wrap.
That's it. Appreciate you guys.